The line was still calm. That was why it scared her. Reese Calder had 7 minutes before the next crowd wave crossed the fan bridge, and the gate system was supposed to be frozen. Instead, the portable turnstile bank slid backward across the painted entry lane with a metal clack that cut through the chance. One wheel hopped over old tape. The base dragged a gray scar through dust and rubber grit. Juno hit the end of the leash, nose low, bark low, all business. Not at the fans. Not at the food trucks, at the base frame. Reese felt the leash pull through her left hand and the bridge radio buzz against her ribs. The crowd beyond the barrier kept singing like nothing had changed. That was how bad roots began. They failed quietly first. Then everyone acted surprised, as if concrete had betrayed them personally. Reese had seen a safe-looking lane eat time before. She had learned to fear the quiet part, the neat part, the place everyone wanted to wave through. Her job was not to trust paint. It was to notice when paint had stopped matching pressure. The turnstile kept sliding, patient and stupid, like weight had more rights than people, and no one had signed for that. Nia Bell stepped in to grab the side rail, young enough to trust a gate that looked official, tired enough to move before thinking. The bank rolled another half-foot backward, slow but heavy, and its near edge came across her hip line. Reese caught Nia's vest with one fist and jerked her back hard. Nylon burned under her knuckles. Nia stumbled into Reese's shoulder, breath knocked flat. The gate edge scraped past empty air where her thigh had been. Juno barked again, shorter this time, and shoved her nose into the dark seam under the base. Reese saw the shadow there, too clean under a bank that should have sat square all morning. Hot metal, fried onions, sweat, and turf rubber folded together in the air. Under it all sat something human and low. Not proof. Not yet. Enough to make her stop the wave before the crowd found the mistake with their bodies. Nia looked down at the mark, then up at Reese, waiting for the world to become simple. It did not. The young marshal swallowed once and tightened both hands around her radio. Her lips moved around a gate status call she never finished. A blackline contractor came in fast from the service side, gloved hands already on the frame. "Maintenance drift," he said, too smooth, too soon. He leaned his weight into the turnstile bank and shoved it back toward the lane before Reese could get a second look. The movement scraped over the floor tape and covered half the fresh mark. Juno lunged low with a hard whine, not aggressive, not confused, just pulled toward odor that had no business being there. Reese planted her boot against the painted stripe and put her voice into the radio. "Bridge hold, no wave." Nia stared at her, one hand pressed to the vest Reese had nearly torn off her. The contractor froze for half a second, then kept pushing. That half second mattered. Men who were fixing equipment looked annoyed. Men who were hiding movement looked afraid of delay. Reese stepped into his line enough to make him check his force. Not a fight. Not yet. Just her body between his hurry and the mark. The contractor's jaw worked once, like he had a schedule stuck in his teeth. His shoulder stayed angled toward the base, not the crowd. The bridge channel answered with static and a clipped protest from event ops. Reese ignored the tone and watched the ground. The bank was almost straight again, but not straight enough. The wheel lock angle faced wrong. A pale dust outline showed where the base had sat before someone moved it. The painted lane was scuffed in two directions, one old and one fresh. Juno dropped her chest low, nose under the frame, tail tight, body telling the same story without a word. The fan line beyond the barrier stayed calm. Families laughed. Someone beat a drum. The sound rolled over the fan bridge and came back larger, warm and stupid with celebration. Nia's radio hand shook once, then steadied. Reese kept her eyes on the edge, not the center. The center always lied longer. The fan bridge wanted people, and Reese had just told it no without enough proof to make anyone comfortable. Beyond the turnstile, the first shoulder line pressed into the rail, soft as a breath, and the rail answered under her palm. That was the next warning. The route was already asking for bodies, and the day had barely started. Not today. The rail under Reese's palm gave a small shiver before the crowd made any new sound. Panic was loud. Pressure was quiet first. It arrived as a tremor in metal, A shoulder line turning wrong, one family stopping while the row behind them kept singing and stepping. The fan bridge still looked clean from the center. Banners waved. Phones stayed up. A boy in a red scarf kept bouncing on his father's shoulders, laughing at something on the big screen. At the edge, though, the line folded inward by inches. The held wave had nowhere useful to go, and everyone behind it believed the pause was temporary. Nia kept one hand on her radio and one on the stanchion, pale under the stadium dust. Juno stood low at Reese's knee, not pulling now, just locked toward the turnstile base and the space beyond it. Event Ops came back hard in Reese's ear, asking for status, asking for timing, asking about the broadcast window as if airtime could argue with steel. Reese answered with one word: hold. She watched the edge where calm had started to collect weight. Calm did not mean safe. It meant the crowd had not learned the bad news yet. Mac Voss arrived with a tool roll he did not open and a face that already knew too much. He was broad through the shoulders, sunburned at the neck, and moving faster than a man who had been called for a routine jam. His eyes went from the wheel lock angle to the scuffed tape to the bank sitting half an inch off its painted lane. Then they flicked to the Blackline logo on the contractor's sleeve. Too fast. Reese caught it. Mac crouched beside the front wheel and ran 2 fingers over the gray scar in the dust. This bank didn't drift, he said. A gate is just a wall with ambition, but even walls usually remember where they were put. His dry voice almost made it sound like nothing. Almost. Reese watched his thumb press against the wheel housing. He did not look at the contractor again. That was its own answer. Blackline your install crew today, she asked, Mac's mouth tight. They're on the supplemental list. Not yes, not no. A schedule answer. He stood slowly, buying a second with his knees and losing it with his eyes. Old teammates had tells. Mac was pretending hardware was easier than guilt. The contractor on the gate frame lifted his radio and spoke away from Reese, low and quick. 2 Blackline workers farther down the barrier line started moving a portable rail section toward Staff Lane Blue. They did it with bored faces, the way men moved things they had already been told to move. No hurry now. That made Reese like it less. The barrier feet scraped over concrete with a thin, ugly sound under the chants. Nia heard it too. Her head turned before her radio did. That lane isn't called, she said. Her voice had a small crack and then recovered. Event Ops pushed into Reese's ear again, asking if the hold was still necessary with no visible surge and repeating match flow twice, the second time louder because some people believed volume improved physics. Reese looked at the edge of the fan bridge where shoulders had started to cant sideways. The crowd was not surging. It was being shaped. Mac stood and wiped dust from his hand onto his pants. Could be a staging correction, he said too quickly. Reese gave him one look. He stopped decorating the lie. The bridge rail shivered again a little harder, and Nia's fingers tightened around the radio. Juno's leash tightened once toward the moving barrier, then eased. Not a mark, not yet. A question with fur and bad timing. Reese kept the bridge closed and felt the cost climb through the radio. Broadcast clock, match flow, fan patience. All the soft words people used before metal and bodies made them honest. Mac's eyes had gone to the workers again. He knew their gear, he knew the barrier model. He knew more than he wanted to say in front of Nia, in front of Reese, maybe in front of himself. Past the creeping rail, a service cart rolled out from behind a food service screen and nosed toward Staff Lane Blue. No lane call had gone out. No marshal had cleared it. The cart wheels clicked over an expansion seam, slow and steady, carrying a stack of covered bins that blocked sight through the frame. Reese heard the bridge rail hum under her hand and saw the staff root open its mouth. The trusted lane was moving first. Mac muttered something that might have been a curse or a measurement. Reese did not care which. She cared that the cart had started before permission. Staff Lane Blue sat one turn behind the fan bridge, close enough to hear the crowd and far enough for bad movement to pretend it was just service work. It looked honest because it had all the little props of honesty. Blue stripping on the concrete. A clipped sign. A lane rope pulled straight. laminated passes swinging from tired necks. People trusted lines like that because the lines had been printed by someone with a badge and a budget. Reese did not trust it. She trusted pressure, and pressure had just moved a cart before permission. Juno took the scent at the edge of the barrier and pulled into the lane, nose up for half a second, then low, then up again. Too neat, too straight. The dog's shoulders worked with purpose, but not with certainty. Food smoke clung to a staff vest hanging over one plastic bin. Cleaning chemical sat under it, sharp and fake. The corridor narrowed around them, turning the roar of the crowd into a dull animal sound behind concrete. Mac came in at Reese's left, breathing through his nose, watching the dog as if he wanted to believe her and wanted proof she was wrong. Nia stayed close to the gate channel radio, pale but moving. The cart wheels ahead clicked once, then went quiet. Juno followed the vest scent into the wrong service mouth. Reese felt it before she named it. The pull had no drag to it, no messy human break, no little hesitation where a frightened body would have touched wall, rail, floor. It ran clean down the center like a line laid out for a dog. Max saw the same shape and did not hide his relief fast enough. Could be crowd transfer, he said. Dog caught cloth, not person. Reese kept moving. Could be. She hated how easy that answer sounded. Official lanes were built to make people stop asking questions. A staff door opened and shut ahead, empty except for the hollow clap of metal. Juno paused at the mouth, sniffed hard, and looked back once. Not quitting. Asking. Reese crouched enough to see the concrete under the rope. No heel marks where there should have been panic. No scuffed shoulder smear on the wall. Just a blue lane marker, too clean to be useful, and a smell riding fabric like a passenger with a pass. The leash hummed in her hand, uncertain but honest. That mattered more than Mac wanted. Reese let the question stay open, because closing it too soon was how people walked into bad lanes. A blackline worker stepped into the lane with both hands out, palms down, the universal language of calm down while he blocked the only useful path. Staff access only, he said. His voice was soft enough to make room for the lie. Nia lifted her radio. Max shifted beside Reese, not toward the man, toward the barrier hook bolted low where the lane bent. Reese saw the snag a beat after he did. A flap of high-visibility fabric had caught under the hook, pinched tight against the metal. Same orange-yellow as the vest smell. Same sweat, same food smoke, same cheap detergent. Juno nosed it, barked once, then backed off as the worker stepped wider. Not attack, not fear, interruption. The route had been dressed. Reese reached down and freed the torn strip with 2 fingers. It came loose with a tiny ripping sound, meaner than it should have been. Behind the worker, something heavy rolled away on rubber wheels, not fast, just steady. The worker smiled without opening his mouth. Somewhere beyond him, a bin lid rattled against plastic, small as a cough behind a closed door. The cost landed in pieces. The held bridge was still pressing behind them. Event Ops was still calling. The cart sound was farther now, and farther was bad. Mac looked at the torn fabric in Reese's hand and then at Juno, his skepticism thinned down to something more useful. They carried the scent, he said. Not a confession. Not yet. Just hardware and cloth finally agreeing with the dog. Reese folded the strip once and tucked it into Nia's open evidence pouch because the young marshal had already understood enough to hold it out. Wrong as data, Reese said, more to herself than to them. Juno had not solved anything. She had followed what she had been given, and what she had been given had been moved. That made the dog useful and the easy answer dangerous. Reese looked past the blocked mouth to the scraped line at floor level. Low, fresh. Angled away from staff lane, blue toward the service cart lane. The trusted route had been bait with blue paint. The real movement was leaving by rubber wheels, and it had a head start. The service cart lane ran out of staff lane blue and bent down toward the ramp, a narrow slot behind food service screens and stacked barrier racks. It was not built for a fight. That was why it was perfect for one. The cart that had left staff lane blue rolled ahead of them with covered bins stacked high enough to block sight through the frame. Its wheels squealed over concrete, then dipped into a seam and came up hard. Juno pulled toward the rear corner, nose working through rubber, hot plastic, old fries, cleaning fluid, and the dirty breath of too many people pressed into one place. Reese kept the leash short without choking the reed. Mac came up on the cart's left, eyes on the axle and the barrier feet. Nia stayed behind Reese's shoulder, radio up, trying to watch the bridge channel and the cart at the same time. A blackline man put his body between Mac and the handle. Another angled a portable barrier across the lane. They did not run. Running would have told the truth too cheaply. The lane smelled like rubber and lunch grease, the kind of ordinary smell that made danger feel insulting. Reese saw the shape before the push came. Blackline was not protecting the bins. They were protecting the path beside them, the small blind strip where a bent body or hard case could move without being named. The cart was the wall. The barrier was the second wall. The men were the hinges. Mac muttered, "That cart isn't scheduled through here." No one answered him. Juno nosed the lower rail, gave one sharp bark, then lost the thread as smoke and warm bin plastic rolled over her face. She circled back, frustrated but not wrong. Reese stepped into the cart's path and put one hand on the side frame. "Hold it," she said. The man at the handle smiled like she had asked for a receipt. "Service lane is live." His shoulder moved first. The barrier flexed next. Reese felt the cart's weight come through the metal into her palm, slow and rude and steady. She could stop one thing, not three. The bridge was still closed behind them. Nia was too close to the barrier edge. Mac was already reaching for a wheel lock that Blackline had no intention of letting him touch. Reese hated the math because the math was already choosing for her. The first shove came through the cart, not a fist. It rolled into Reese's thigh and turned her sideways. Mac caught the barrier before it clipped Juno, and the metal flexed against his forearm with a hollow pop. Nia tried to step back and found a stacked rack at her calves. Her radio knocked hard against plastic, squawking half a word from event ops. Reese grabbed her vest again, less clean this time, more drag than rescue, and hauled her off the pinch point as the barrier kissed the concrete where her ankle had been. Something knocked twice from inside or beneath the cart frame. Not loud, deliberate, metal on metal. Then a small plastic clip skittered out from under the rear bin and spun against Reese's boot. A broken lanyard tab, dark with dust at the torn edge. The plastic showed half a name under the grime, Cam Ivers. Below it in smaller type, Event Tech. Nia saw it and went still in a way that was worse than flinching. "Lower gate tech," she said, almost under the radio noise. Juno lunged to it, barked low, then jerked back as the cart moved again. Reese saw Max see it, saw the color leave him. The clip was cheap, ordinary, and suddenly more important than all the shouting around it. Blackline 1 ground the ugly way, inches, shoulders, wheels, denial. The cart shoved past Reese's hand, and the barrier slid after it, sealing the space she had wanted. Inside or under the cart frame, the knocking came again. 2 hits. A pause, then one scrape that sounded intentional because panic rarely kept rhythm that clean. A hard event ops transport case came into view for 3 seconds between 2 bodies, dark gray, clipped shut, marked only enough to look official to the wrong eyes. Mac turned toward it by instinct. Reese almost did too. That was the trick. The case appeared only after she had blocked the cart path, like a prize shown after the door had already opened somewhere else. The Blackline men protected the cart tighter than the case. One shoulder stayed with the bins. One hand stayed low on the side frame. The case rode exposed, almost careless. Reese let that fact burn in instead of chasing it. Juno strained toward the broken clip, then toward the cart, split by odor and movement. Nia breathed hard beside her, not helpless, not steady either. Ahead, the lane bent down toward the service ramp. The cart's wheels clicked faster there. Behind Reese, the held crowd kept singing, unaware that their safe path had just become leverage. The service ramp sat below the service cart lane and under the fan bridge, low enough that the crowd became weather in the ceiling. It took the cart noise and made it meaner. Wheels clicked down the slope, bins rattling inside the frame, the hard case flashing between Blackline's shoulders like something Reese was meant to see. The Event Ops transport case was not fake. That was the problem. It was sealed, heavy, and valuable enough to pull eyes, official enough to explain a lot of bad movement, and visible only because Reese had forced the cart path ugly. The ramp smelled of damp concrete, hot dust, and old metal. Crowd noise thudded overhead, flattened by the ceiling, then came back through the walls as a dull roar. Juno tried to work the rear corner and failed to settle. Her nose found the broken lanyard scent, lost it under plastic bin heat, found the cart rail, lost that too. Mac limped one step down and swore under his breath, not from injury yet, just from recognition. "They're using the case to pull us off the worker," he said, too late. Reese heard him and still moved toward it. She had to. A real object could leave the perimeter. A real object could become tomorrow's lie if she let it vanish in front of her. Blackline closed around the ramp like they had practiced being ordinary. One man kept a palm on the cart handle. Another held the barrier angle with his hip. Orson Vale stood halfway down, clean shirt, service lanyard, face calm enough to be insulting. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. "Ramp flow stays live," he said, as if the ramp were a weather report and not a trap. Then quieter to the worker on the cart, "No dead space." The phrase had no heat in it. That made it worse. Reese saw the last clean route then. Cart down, case visible, worker path hidden, crowd wave held above them until somebody lost patience. Mac moved for the barrier hinge. Not dramatic, just fast for a man who had already spent too many seconds lying to himself. "If we pin this here, they have to stop," he said. Reese put her shoulder into the case side gap and felt the cart shift back half an inch. Half an inch felt like victory in the stupid way danger sometimes offered crumbs. Orson's eyes went from Mac's hands to Reese's boots to Juno's loose, uncertain line. He looked annoyed now. Not angry. Annoyed because the route had stopped behaving. That was when Reese knew subtle was over. The sound came first as a flat crack trapped inside concrete, not big, not cinematic, just hard enough to slap every thought out of the ramp. Reese did not see a weapon clearly. Good. She did not need the details, and neither did anyone else. She felt the effect. Bodies flinched. The cart jumped forward. Nia's voice broke over the radio upstairs and dissolved into static. Mac took the cost at the barrier, his breath catching as metal snapped sideways into him and folded him down to one knee. Reese grabbed his vest before he hit flat. Juno went silent. That was worse than barking. The leash went slack, then too tight, then slack again as the dog jammed herself against Reese's leg, eyes wide, mouth open, panting but not reading anything. Noise had filled her up. Handler stress, concrete echo, crowd roar, hot metal, too much. The bins lurched. Something inside or beneath the cart knocked once, then scraped away down the ramp. Cam was moving again, still alive enough to fight the route, too far for Reese to touch. The case slid into clear view for one clean second like bait on a hook polished by money. It was a cheap trick. It worked anyway. Reese almost went for the case. The old mistake had hands. It grabbed people by the eyes and called itself proof. The case mattered. It was physical, valuable, and moving. It was also not breathing. The cart path behind it had swallowed the human trace, the broken clip, the knocks, the whole ugly answer. Blackline had not needed to beat her. They had needed to make her choose late. Max shoved one palm against the wall and tried to stand, face gray under stadium dust. "Reese," he said, and the word carried more warning than pain. Juno pressed against Reese's shin, shaking in small waves, useless for the moment and ashamed of nothing because dogs at least had the decency not to turn failure into theater. Above them the chant bent, not louder, wrong. The held crowd had found a soft edge and was beginning to lean into it. Event Ops shouted through the radio about movement at the bridge. Orson's crew gained 3 yards down the ramp. Cam went with them. The module stayed just visible. Reese understood the insult. She had chased the thing she could name, and Blackline had moved the person who could name them. The bridge was becoming the next weapon now, too. The wrong wave showed itself at the fan bridge before Reese reached the top of the ramp. Not as panic. Panic would have been easier in the same stupid way a fire alarm was easier than smoke under a door. This was quieter. The chant bent out of time. Shoulders turned against the marked lane. A stopped row became a plug, and the row behind it kept feeding pressure because nobody back there could see the reason. Near the rail, the boy in the red scarf stopped bouncing. His father shifted sideways to keep him balanced, and that small correction traveled through the line like a bad thought. A drop program slid under one shoe and stayed there. Reese came up with concrete dust on one sleeve, Juno shaking at her knee, Mac breathing hard behind her with one arm tucked close. The bridge rail had a tremor in it now, a busy little vibration that ran through Reese's palm and up her wrist. Event Ops hit her radio with too many words. She cut through them. Hold the center, watch the edge. Nia's voice came back thin but present, repeating Gates' status, trying to sound older than she was. Blackline had gained ground in the ramp. Cam had moved. The case had stayed visible on purpose. Reese tasted metal and anger and kept both out of her voice. The crowd was the job. Nia was at the bridge edge, one hand locked around her radio, the other pressed against a stanchion that had started to creep a fraction out of line. She saw Reese and then saw Mac, and the question hit her face before she swallowed it. Good, questions could wait. Reese pointed two fingers at the folding edge. You close that if I tell you, not discuss, not ask permission twice, close it. Nia nodded once, too fast, then steadied. Copy. She added her own voice marker into the radio, small but clearer than before. Gate line holding. Mac braced himself against the barrier and tried to make standing look like a hobby. It did not. I can still read hardware, he said. Reese almost told him not to be heroic. No time. Blackline workers farther down used the wrong wave like a curtain, bodies sliding behind movement that looked like normal crowd adjustment if a person wanted very badly to be fooled. Reese did not. She stepped into the edge and shoved the first loose barrier foot back into line with her hip and forearm. Not graceful, effective enough. Juno panted hard, eyes too wide, muzzle dusty, the leash a dead weight instead of a tool. The dog was there, but not back. There was a difference. Reese had one clean urge left, go down the ramp and take back the yards she had lost. It was a bad urge dressed up as courage. The bridge answered under her hand again, and that settled it. Crowd first, target second. She said it low, not for drama, not for anyone's approval. A rule was only worth having when it hurt. Dropped to one knee beside Juno, putting her body between the dog and the worst of the movement. Passed her the small water bottle without being asked. Marshall, hands, good eyes, wet her palm and touched Juno's muzzle, then the collar line, firm but soft, the way they had done after noise before. Flinched once. Did not chase the flinch. Waited half a breath, maybe less. Crowd pressed. Cursed behind her. Radio crackled. Put her palm flat against Juno's chest. With me, eyes found hers. Clean, bright, was enough for now. Leash regained a little life, a thin line of purpose under fingers. Was not magic. Was work done while everything shoved at you. Stood and handed the next piece of the mess to, because someone had to own the bridge when moved. Your call window is mine until I say otherwise. If the edge folds again, you close the wave. You will get yelled at, let them. Jaw tight. Copy. Time the word held. Shifted his weight and nodded toward the upper service line, pain making his face honest for once. Had used the wrong wave as cover, but cover had edges too. Turned her head not toward the ramp, not toward the case, but toward the darker underside beyond the media deck stairs. Nose lifted, caught, lost, then caught again. Leash drew a shallow angle across thigh. Real. Followed the line with her eyes and saw vendor smoke thinning under the concrete overhang, airflow sliding where it should not matter and suddenly did. Route was not solved. Had turned sideways. Ops kept shouting about delay. Crowd kept singing badly, which meant alive. Took the leash. Felt Juno lean into the scent edge. And moved toward the media deck before could make the next wrong thing look official. The media deck underside sat between the ramp behind them and the final gate approach ahead, a shadowed concrete slot where service movement could disappear for 20 useful yards. Swallowed the stadium noise and gave it back hollow. Tens of thousands of people sounded like weather trapped in concrete. Her boots. The floor was cooler. damp in little patches where spilled ice water had run down from vendor bays and found shade. Took the scent edge sideways, not forward, which was exactly the kind of annoying truth trusted. Dog did not charge. Drifted, checked, lost it, then found it again where vendor smoke thinned under the deck stairs. Slipped through a service gap and tugged at a loose strip of black fabric caught on a cable guard. An answer. Direction. Them, the wrong wave still pressed at the bridge, and voice cut in and out on the radio, holding her call window like had told her. Came down slower, one arm tight, face gray, breathing through his teeth. Did not complain. Was worse than complaining. A worker dragged a low barrier through a partial metal feet, whispering over concrete toward the final approach. We're not hiding now. We're timing. Juno nosed the edge of the service gap and gave one short, uncertain bark. Followed the leash angle with her eyes instead of her hopes. Scent did not point to a body sitting nicely in shadow, waiting to be rescued for the convenience of the story. Pointed through moved air, past camera truck hum under cables, around a blind corner where equipment could pass as work if nobody looked twice. Had been using the underside like a throat, not a room. One glimpse between support columns, saw two men swing a portable barrier end around and feed it toward the final gate approach. Fast. Way a bad thing moved when it wore a badge lanyard and knew people respected laminated plastic too much. Ops hit the radio again about delay, broadcast window, bridge pressure. Answered before could, voice thin but steady, saying the wave was not clear. Kept moving. Stepped on a cable guard, stumbled and caught himself with a grunt. Injury slowed him. Eyes did not. Stayed fixed on the barrier route like a man watching his own mistake grow wheels. Max said it while they were still moving, like confession in a church, like something torn out by pain and bad timing. I signed the supplemental crew. Cart banged somewhere ahead and Juno flinched but stayed on the edge. Did not look back right away. Back would have let him turn shame into a room. Was no room. Kept going because stopping would have made it worse. Last-minute substitution. Their paperwork cleared through event ops and I said yes because the other crew was late and the bridge install had to stay on schedule. Barrier foot scraped beyond the next column. Could hear the final lane being built while his guilt tried to catch up with it. It was betrayal, some grand secret rot, practical shortcut wearing a clean shirt. Kind that killed people because it came stamped reasonable. You knew the gear, she said. I knew the gear, Max said. I didn't know the men. Voice cracked on men, not much enough. Looked at him then. Guilty, still useful, terrible combination. Then you read it now, she said. You tell me where that barrier wants to be. Swallowed, wiped sweat from his upper lip with the back of his good hand and pointed toward the gap ahead. Bridge throat. They're making a false lane. The words landed and the route changed shape and head. Final approach was not just ahead, was already being built. Had moved the worker, teased the case, bent the wave, and now aimed the equipment toward the bridge throat where a crowd would accept whatever opening looked official. Had moved the wall, once. Pulled a little harder, then stopped at the edge of shadow where the deck gave way to hot light and open concrete. Could not give cam. Could give the line his movement had crossed. Would have to be enough because the clock had stopped being polite. Came over the radio, louder now, fighting crowd noise. Edges folding again. Ops talked over her, cursed, low and practical, and pointed to a turnstile bank being dragged into the final gate approach. Bodies moved with it. Stood beyond them watching the wave, not. Bothered her more. Tightened the leash once, felt Juno lean into the edge, and started for the final gate before the false lane became the only lane. Deck shadow fell behind them like a door closing. The final gate approach was already moving when came out from under the media deck. Had a turnstile bank angled across the open concrete, not fully placed, not fully wrong yet, which made it more dangerous. Built lies were easier for crowds to trust. Workers dragged a barrier foot by foot toward the bridge throat, while another kept a hand on the cart line as if it belonged there. Crowd wave rolled closer behind the rail, still singing, still believing the held lane would become permission any second. Screamed over concrete. Jumped at the barrier feet. Hit the hot light and checked hard, nose low, then lifted toward the moving edge and lost the thread in sweat, rubber, food smoke, and fear. Trying, came up beside with his injured arm tucked tight and his good hand already reaching for the barrier line. Voice cracked over the radio, reporting the edge fold like she was reading weather while standing in it. Ops shouted for an opening. Command wanted status. Gave them none of the speech they deserved and all of the time she could spare. Stand by. Gate dragged another inch, loud as bad judgment. She had no calm room, no clean map, no heroic pause where everybody looked at her and understood the plan because stories like neat little miracles. Had a dog half back from overload, a hardware man carrying guilt and pain, and a junior marshal with a radio and a career on the hook. False lane was being built in front of a crowd that would follow metal if it looked official enough. Was the team, her, pointed at Mac first. Cart and barrier. If it moves toward the throat, you pin it. Mac nodded once. Sweat ran down his temple. He looked sick, hurt, and useful. I can hold a bad hinge, he said. Been doing it all day. She let that pass because shame was not a luxury item right now. She turned to Nia on the radio. Your closure call is live. If I say cut, you cut the wave and eat the yelling. Event Ops called Nia's name twice, hard enough that the radio clipped the first syllable. Nia looked once at the crowd, once at the barrier foot crawling out of line and found her voice. Copy, I eat the yelling. Reese almost smiled. Almost. Orson's crew shifted the turnstile again and the almost died. Juno worked the edge of the approach, panting hard, tail tight, paws quick on the warm concrete. She sniffed the barrier foot, the cart track, the open space where bodies had passed, then backed off and looked at Reese. Not enough. Not yet. Reese did not ask for more than the dog had. That was how handlers lied to themselves and blamed the animal for being honest. Mac braced his good shoulder into the barrier line and set his boots wide. His injured side flinched when the metal kissed his ribs. Nia's radio came alive with event ops counting pressure, gate delay, broadcast risk, all the soft official words that tried to sand down hard choices. Reese stepped into the lane between the moving turnstile and the bridge throat. Wrong closure could split the wave into a second hazard. Late closure could feed the crowd into Blackline's false mouth. No closure gave Orson the route. Human beings were ridiculous. They could build 20 signs and still make the truth come down to one body in the way. Reese took one breath and felt how thin it was. Then she raised her radio. Nia on my cut. Mac, hold when it bites. Juno, edge. The dog lowered her nose, waiting. The turnstile bank lurched another foot toward the throat. Blackline bodies pushed with it, faces flat, hands low, each man looking like labor until the lane shape betrayed him. Orson stood beyond the rail and spoke into his own radio, watching the crowd wave arrive. Not the case, not Reese, the wave, that told her enough. The bridge rail began to sing under pressure, a thin metal hum that went through Reese's teeth. Juno barked once at the edge, frustrated and sharp, but did not break. Mac grunted as the barrier shoved into him. Nia came over Reese's radio, breath loud, voice smaller but solid. Wave at line. Event Ops talked over her again. Reese ignored them again. Some habits were useful. She saw the second hazard in her head. Close too early, bodies stack. Close too late, Blackline owns the throat. There was no clean answer. There was only the answer that kept the most people alive and left the cost where it belonged. Reese took one step forward, felt the concrete vibrate under the moving bank, and gave the command that could not be politely taken back. Cut the wave. Hold the throat. Blackline pushed into the gap as the crowd reached it. Blackline hit the fan bridge throat with the turnstile bank still moving. The crowd wave reached the held line at the same time. For one bad second, the whole world became pressure. Metal forward, bodies forward, radio noise forward. Every system tried to make Reese step aside and call it flow. She did not. She put herself in the gap between the angled bank and the throat rail, shoulder first, palms on hot metal. The turnstile pushed back like it had weight and permission. Behind it, Orson's men leaned in with flat faces, selling labor while they stole ground. Juno barked once, sharp and furious, then planted at the edge of the cart track, nose low, paws locked, not at Orson, not at the case. At the scene where Cam's scent had crossed and been dragged away. Edge only. Reese took it for what it was and nothing more. The dog's body made a line, not an answer, and Reese hated how badly she needed even that. "Mac," she said, breath rough. "Now." Mac drove his good shoulder into the barrier line and caught the moving rail before it opened the false lane all the way. The barrier flexed hard enough to make Mac grunt through his teeth. His injured side folded, but his grip held. A cart wheel bucked against the rail and stopped half-turned, trapped between Mac's weight and the frame Reese had forced crooked. Blackline shoved again. Reese lost 2 inches, got one back, and felt the crowd answer the motion with a low, confused surge. Nia came through the radio, voice shaking but not breaking. "Wave cut. Holding." Event ops shouted over her. Someone from local command wanted confirmation. Nia held anyway. The broadcast window was gone now. So was the easy version of her career. The woman still held the wave, good, terrified probably, employed tomorrow maybe not, alive today, and that mattered more. Juno stayed at the scent edge, panting hard, body angled toward the lower gap beneath the cart line. She did not solve it. She gave Reese a boundary. Reese saw what that boundary did to the route. If Cam was inside the blind strip, then Blackline could not finish the lane without rolling him through the exact edge Juno had marked. Reese leaned harder into the turnstile, bruised hand slipping on dust and sweat. Her shoulder burned. Her radio dug into her ribs. The metal fought in ugly little jumps. So did the men behind it. "Open the cart side," she told Mac. "Not the throat." Mac understood before he liked it. He hauled the barrier a handspan sideways, not free, just enough to jam the cart frame against the turnstile base. Blackline's push turned against itself. The cart shuddered, bins sliding, plastic cracking. From beneath the rear cover came a ragged knock, then a man's hand, pale with dust, fingers curled around the broken lanyard Reese had seen before. Cam Ivers came into view by pieces, shoulder, blood-dark sleeve, face gray and working hard to stay in the world. The badge fragment had cut a red line into his fingers where he had held it too hard. His eyes found the rail first, then Reese, and he tried to pull his knees clear before he had the strength for it. Not a speech, not a revelation. A living man refusing to be moved cleanly. Juno barked at the edge and backed off when Reese called her, because the dog had done her part and mercifully did not have an ego about it. Reese hooked her arm under Cam's shoulder and dragged him clear of the moving line with Mac blocking the cart's kickback. The hard transport case slid loose and thumped onto the inside concrete, still inside the perimeter, still closed, suddenly less important than breathing. Orson shouted something that vanished under the crowd roar. He tried to push around the bank. Reese stepped into him with the gate frame between them and denied him the lane. No flourish, just weight, angle, refusal. The turnstile stopped with a dead metal clack. For a beat nobody trusted the silence. Then the crowd noise came back wrong in a better way, angry, delayed, alive. A cup bounced off the rail somewhere. The boy in the red scarf was crying now, not hurt, just scared and furious at the adult world which seemed fair. Nia kept the wave held while event ops discovered, much too late and with great professional confidence, that the route was unsafe. Local command voices stacked over the radio, asking for medical, containment, names, status. None of them had stopped the lane. They were arriving after the truth had become heavy enough to touch. Max slid down against the barrier, one hand still on the rail, face white, eyes on Cam instead of Reese. Juno pressed against Reese's leg, shaking from fatigue now, not confusion. Cam breathed on the concrete. The module case sat inside the line, ugly and quiet. Blackline bodies were pinned in plain sight with nowhere official left to hide. Reese looked at the held bridge, the furious crowd, Nia's fixed hand on the radio, Mac bleeding through his sleeve, and knew the review would come for her before the sweat dried. She would get forms, calls, questions shaped like blame. That was fine. Not pleasant, fine. The final turnstile stood still. The crowd was alive. Juno leaned against Reese's leg.